When preparing an electrical installation bid proposal for a new residential installation, consider these key aspects. The scope of work is paramount. You want to be precise in what you're including in the bid. Firstly, detail the interior lighting, including the quantity and type of recessed lights, such as 55 6-inch recessed lights. Secondly, note the quantity and type of any fluorescent fixtures, such as 10 2-bulb 4-foot wrap fixtures. Thirdly, include the number of dimmers and three-way dimmers, mentioning quantities, for example, 10 dimmers and 12 three-way dimmers. Fourthly, specify the quantity of closet fixtures, such as 12 closet fixtures. Fifthly, specify the quantity of chandeliers, such as 4 chandeliers. Address the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, or HVAC, components. Note the size of the air conditioning unit, for example, a 30-amp air conditioning unit and condenser. Clearly outline the kitchen appliances to be connected, noting standard appliances such as dishwashers, microwaves, and refrigerators. Document the number of switch receptacles, for example 6 switch receptacles. Specify the total number of receptacles, such as 102 receptacles. Address bathroom electrical components, including exhaust fans and lights, for example, 3 exhaust fan lights. Describe the number of standard switches, such as 15 switches. Also, document any phone and cable installations, such as 4 phone and cable runs. Be sure to include the quantity of round ceiling boxes, such as 15 round ceiling boxes. Specify the number and length of under-counter lights, such as 4 3-foot under-counter lights and 5 3-foot under-counter lights. Clearly state the size of the electrical service, such as a 200-amp electrical service. Mention the number of rooms in the house, indicating if there's a basement, for example, 10 rooms with a basement. Next, consider the labor and materials involved. Provide an estimate for electrical materials costs. This should be a detailed breakdown of all the materials needed for the project. Provide an estimate for labor costs, taking into account the time and personnel required to complete the installation. Clearly state the total bid amount, which is the sum of the electrical materials cost and the labor cost. State any assumptions that the bid is based upon. Firstly, specify that all materials are of standard quality. Secondly, state that all work will be performed in accordance with applicable building codes. Thirdly, provide an estimated timeline for completion of the installation. Fourthly, state that the customer will provide access to the site during installation. Clearly outline the payment terms. Firstly, require a 50% deposit upon signing the contract. Secondly, require the remaining 50% upon completion of the installation. Include additional notes relevant to the project. Firstly, note the installation of smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, for example, 12 smoke detectors and 3 carbon monoxide detectors. Secondly, state that the bid includes all necessary wiring, switches, and accessories. It is very important to provide your contact information, including your name, company name, phone number, and email address. Include a disclaimer stating that the bid is subject to revision based on unforeseen circumstances or changes in the scope of work. When calculating the bid, there are several factors to consider to ensure profitability and competitiveness. Firstly, material costs. Obtain accurate quotes from electrical suppliers for all materials required, including wiring, conduit, boxes, fixtures, and devices. Consider potential price fluctuations and include a buffer for unforeseen material expenses. Secondly, labor costs. Estimate the number of hours required for each task, such as wiring, fixture installation, panel upgrades, and device connections. Factor in the hourly rate of electricians, including wages, benefits, and payroll taxes. Account for travel time, setup, and cleanup. Thirdly, permits and fees. Research local building codes and permit requirements. Include the costs of electrical permits and inspection fees in the bid. Fourthly, overhead costs. Allocate a portion of your company's overhead expenses to the project, including rent, utilities, insurance, and administrative costs. Fifthly, profit margin. Determine your desired profit margin for the project. This should be a percentage of the total costs, ensuring a reasonable return on investment. To estimate the time required for the installation, break down the project into smaller tasks and estimate the time required for each. Consider the complexity of the wiring, the accessibility of work areas, and the number of fixtures and devices to be installed. Use historical data from similar projects to estimate labor hours accurately. For example, wiring a typical receptacle might take 15 to 30 minutes, while installing a ceiling fan might take 1 to 2 hours. Installing a 200 amp electrical service might take 1 to 2 days, depending on the complexity of the existing system and local requirements. Be sure to factor in time for troubleshooting and problem solving, as unexpected issues can arise during the installation process. To ensure compliance with electrical codes and safety standards, familiarize yourself with the National Electrical Code, or NEC, and local building codes. Verify that all materials and equipment meet UL or Underwriters Laboratories standards and are approved for their intended use. Follow proper wiring methods and grounding techniques to prevent electrical hazards. Use appropriate personal protective equipment, or PPE, such as safety glasses, gloves, and insulated tools. Conduct thorough inspections and testing to verify the integrity of the electrical system. When selecting materials and equipment, choose reputable brands known for quality and reliability. Use copper wiring of appropriate gauge for the intended application. Select circuit breakers and fuses with the correct ampacity to protect against overloads and short circuits. Use energy-efficient lighting fixtures and appliances to reduce energy consumption. Choose durable and weather-resistant materials for outdoor installations. To avoid common bidding mistakes, carefully review the project specifications and scope of work before preparing the bid. Visit the job site to assess the complexity of the installation and identify any potential challenges. Obtain multiple quotes from suppliers to ensure competitive pricing. Double-check all calculations and assumptions to minimize errors. Include all relevant costs in the bid, such as permits, fees, and taxes. Clearly communicate the scope of work, payment terms, and any exclusions in the bid proposal. Be responsive to customer inquiries and provide timely updates on the bid status. Follow up with the customer after submitting the bid to address any questions or concerns. To manage risk and liability, obtain adequate insurance coverage, including general liability and workers' compensation insurance. Use written contracts that clearly define the scope of work, payment terms, and responsibilities of each party. Document all changes and modifications to the original contract in writing. Maintain accurate records of all expenses, labor hours, and materials used in the project. Follow safety protocols and procedures to prevent accidents and injuries. Provide training to employees on electrical safety and code compliance. Consider obtaining a surety bond to guarantee performance and protect against potential losses. To stay competitive in the electrical bidding market, continuously improve your estimating skills and knowledge of electrical codes and technologies. Invest in software and tools that can streamline the bidding process and improve accuracy. Network with other contractors, suppliers, and industry professionals to stay informed about market trends and pricing. Seek out opportunities for continuing education and professional development. Provide excellent customer service and build a reputation for quality workmanship. Market your services effectively to attract new customers and projects. Consider specializing in a particular niche, such as residential, commercial, or industrial electrical work, to differentiate yourself from competitors. To determine the correct wire gauge for a 30 amp air conditioning unit, refer to the National Electrical Code, or NEC Table 310.15b16, which provides ampacity ratings for conductors based on their size and insulation type. For a 30 amp circuit, you will typically need at least a 10 American wire gauge, or AUG, copper conductor with a temperature rating of 75 degrees Celsius. It is important to consider the voltage drop and conductor length when selecting the wire gauge, especially for longer runs. Always consult the NEC and local codes for specific requirements and to ensure compliance. Note that aluminum conductors have different ampacity ratings and may require a larger gauge than copper conductors for the same load. Grounding conductors should also be sized according to the NEC. When calculating the service size for a new home, you must consider the total connected load of all electrical devices and appliances. This includes lighting, receptacles, heating, air conditioning, cooking equipment, and other major appliances. Use the NEC load calculation methods to determine the demand load, which is the maximum amount of power the home is likely to draw at any given time. Based on the demand load, you can select the appropriate service size, such as 100 amps, 200 amps, or larger. A 200 amp service is often sufficient for a typical new home with standard appliances and central air conditioning. However, larger homes with extensive electrical loads may require a larger service. Always consult with a qualified electrician and local utility company to determine the appropriate service size for the specific application. The service entrance conductors and overcurrent protection devices must be sized accordingly to match the service size. The overcurrent protection for a 30 amp air conditioning unit is typically a 30 amp circuit breaker or fuse. The size of the overcurrent protection device is determined by the equipment manufacturer's specifications and the NEC requirements. For a 30 amp air conditioning unit, you will typically use a 30 amp circuit breaker or fuse, provided that the equipment is listed and labeled for that size. It is important to follow the manufacturer's instructions and NEC guidelines for selecting the appropriate overcurrent protection device. Using an undersized overcurrent protection device can cause nuisance tripping, while using an oversized device can create a fire hazard. The overcurrent protection device should be installed in a panel board or disconnect switch that is readily accessible. When installing recessed lighting, it is important to follow the NEC guidelines and manufacturer's instructions to ensure safety and prevent fire hazards. Firstly, use recessed lighting fixtures that are IC or insulation contact rated, which means they are designed to be in direct contact with insulation. Secondly, maintain proper clearance between the recessed lighting fixtures and combustible materials such as wood framing and insulation. Thirdly, use the correct type and size of wiring for the recessed lighting circuit following the NEC ampacity requirements. Fourthly, install thermal barriers around the recessed lighting fixtures if they are not IC rated. Fifthly, use recessed lighting trims that are compatible with the housing and bulb type. Sixthly, inspect the recessed lighting installation to ensure that all connections are tight and that there are no exposed wires. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that recessed lighting is installed safely and in compliance with electrical codes. The location of the electrical panel in a new home should comply with the NEC and local building codes. Firstly, the electrical panel should be readily accessible and not obstructed by furniture, storage, or other items. Secondly, the electrical panel should be located in a dry, well-ventilated area, away from sources of moisture or extreme temperatures. Thirdly, the electrical panel should have sufficient working space in front of it, typically at least 36 inches deep and 30 inches wide. Fourthly, the electrical panel should be located near the main service entrance and grounding electrode conductor. Fifthly, the electrical panel should be located in a common area of the home, such as a hallway or utility room, and not in a bedroom, bathroom, or closet. Sixthly, the electrical panel should be mounted securely to a wall or other structural support. By following these guidelines, you can ensure that the electrical panel is located in a safe and accessible location. The NEC also specifies the maximum number of overcurrent devices that can be installed in a panel board based on its size and design. The NEC provides guidelines for spacing receptacles in a residential dwelling to ensure that no point along the wall line is more than 6 feet from a receptacle. Firstly, receptacles should be installed so that no point along the floor line in any wall space is more than 6 feet, measured horizontally, from an outlet in that space, including any space measured around corners. Secondly, wall space is any space 2 feet or more in width and unbroken along the floor line by doorways, fireplaces, and similar openings. Thirdly, in kitchen and dining areas, receptacles should be installed at each countertop space that is 12 inches or wider. Fourthly, island and peninsular countertops that are 12 inches or wider should have at least one receptacle. Fifthly, at least one wall receptacle outlet should be installed in bathrooms within 3 feet of the outside edge of each basin. Sixthly, at least one receptacle outlet should be installed outdoors at the front and back of the house. Seventhly, at least one receptacle outlet should be installed in each attached garage and detached garage with electric power. Eighthly, at least one receptacle outlet should be installed in each unfinished basement or cellar. Ninthly, all 125-volt, 15-amp and 20-amp receptacles in dwelling units must be tamper-resistant to protect children from electrical shock. By following these receptacle spacing guidelines, you can ensure that there are enough outlets available for the safe and convenient use of electrical appliances and devices throughout the home. These requirements are in place to minimize the use of extension cords, which can be a fire hazard.